saying yes, and performing when the stakes are high. If you have 15 minutes to spare, listen to Michael Massimino's audio story produced by the nonprofit storytelling organization The Moth, as broadcast on many public radio stations. Massimino is an MIT-trained astronaut who was assigned to take a spacewalk to fix one of the Hubble Space Telescope's most valuable and delicate technologies, a spectrograph that detects whether atmospheres on far-off planets in other solar systems could support life. Talk about pressure. Massimino, working with another astronaut who is inside the shuttle, examines the sensor, which was designed to be tamper-proof, in a rocket scientist kind of way. His fellow astronaut talks him through different solutions as one idea after another fails, but they never say no. Massimino observed, "I was beginning to feel pretty alone, and I don't mean sitting in a chair by yourself on a Sunday afternoon wearing your slippers and reading the newspaper alone." The two astronauts have the fate of the Hubble Space Telescope in their hands, and they keep saying yes, and to one more idea and one more thought and one more approach until the sensor is fixed. Finally, Massimino enjoys a moment watching Earth hanging amidst all of the terrifyingly beautiful grandeur of space from outside the shuttle. How yes, and works for you at work. Saying yes, and is key to the way many of our greatest entrepreneurs think and work. Google Executive Chairman Eric Schmidt said in a much-admired speech to UC Berkeley's graduates in 2012, "Even if it is a bit edgy, a bit out of your comfort zone, saying yes means that you will do something new, meet someone new, and make a difference in your life, and likely in others' lives as well. Yes lets you stand out in a crowd, to be the optimist, to stay positive, to be the one everyone comes to for help, for advice, or just for fun. Yes is what keeps us all young. Yes is a tiny word that can do big things. Say it often." But Schmidt didn't just start talking about yes in his commencement addresses. Saying yes pervades Google's famous culture and operating processes, which are not quite the corporate fairy tale imagined on the street, but are nonetheless innovative and dramatically different from life at many competing tech giants. Many of Google's processes are about keeping up manager-employee dialogue, personal enterprise, and access to senior executives throughout the organization free of unnecessary no's. Among the many examples at Google are its TGIF meetings, where employees submit public questions to senior management, posting employee and team quarterly goals on its intranet, its flat and flexible organizational structure, where employees are allowed to change projects without going through approvals, and its practice of allowing its employees to use 20% of their time to develop and explore their own initiatives. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Work Week, is another example of how the saying yes and mindset can power you past the conventional boundaries. Tim decided to keep saying yes and over again to his big idea that it's possible to be successful by working fewer hours, not more. He persevered, despite enduring early failures. Supposed experts and gatekeepers said no, but Tim and his literary agent, Stephen Hanselman, also my agent, kept saying yes, and until they finally got the green light from one publisher. Just one. And that's all they needed. I'm sure those who said no are still kicking themselves because, at the time of this writing, the 4-Hour Work Week is fast approaching sales of nearly 2 million copies. Neuroscience backs saying yes, and saying yes, and is also confirmed by science as a tonic for your brain and productivity. I won't get too technical, but if you haven't heard about negativity bias, it's a pretty interesting concept. Experts in neuroscience write about this frequently. Because our brains evolved millions of years ago, when human beings could become a meal for a lion or saber-toothed tiger or be easily overrun by marauding tribes, survival required noticing the faintest signals of danger in our environment. Over the millennia since, we've become wired to scout for danger. As a result, our brains tend to have greater memories, stronger initial reactions, and more stickiness for the kinds of no's and pushbacks that are common in an office workplace and in business in general. The parts of our brain that fear serious mayhem are easily triggered by small stuff, such as the boss shooting down your idea in a meeting, dinging your tribal status in front of your peers. As neuroscientist and author Rick Hansen has written, we continually look for negative information, overreact to it, and then quickly store these reactions in brain structure. For example, we learn faster from pain than from pleasure, and negative interactions have more impact on a relationship than positive ones. In effect, our brain is like Velcro for the bad but Teflon for the good. Because our brains have this almost telepathic paranoia for criticism and threat, scientists and neuroleadership experts such as David Rock have written about the importance of avoiding the brain's threat radar and managing and motivating people, including yourself, to give their best performance. Performers know this intuitively. When people encounter a stimulus, Rock has written, their brain will either tag the stimulus as good and engage in the stimulus approach, or their brain will tag the stimulus as bad and disengage from the stimulus avoid. If a stimulus is associated with positive emotions or rewards, it will likely lead to an approach response. If it is associated with negative emotions or punishments, it will likely lead to an avoid response. Numerous studies show that the engagement we get from focusing on the approach response has positive effects on decision-making, stress management, collaboration, and motivation. Or as Rock says, people learn best when they are interested in something. Interest is an approach state. Saying yes, and, is an approach trigger. It begins the positive cycle of creative, productive problem solving. Saying yes, and, isn't about giving yourself permission to say or do whatever crosses your mind. But it is about giving yourself permission to explore and experiment, to improve your ideas by finding out what works and what doesn't. Writing and rehearsing for your spotlight moments can be messy, and you need to say yes, and, to your own talent so it can find its way. If you really want to take the first step to becoming an outstanding speaker and performer, then get accustomed to saying yes.